Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
That's really well done.
It wasn't really necessarily intentional. They had competitions at the gym and I wanted to win, so.
Ah, well, looking good.
Thanks.
Big weather.
I wouldn't have guessed you had that much. But you're definitely looking leaner.
Well, I enjoy the gym, so that's been
Which gym do you go to?
exercise works. It's like a CrossFit.
I don't know if Ann told you or not, but you guys haven't adopted the rules of procedure yet for comments, so you can just follow what city council does, which is people fill out a card and they have 3 minutes.
I didn't hear 40, I heard.
They have to fill out a card, and then
I guess, maybe.
Right.
And when do they fill out the card?
Either right before or right after they speak. So they don't have to, they can say their name, they don't have to state their address, they fill out a card, it's all on this, and then they have their 3 minutes.
Very good.
Just so everyone
They
knows
can
what's
chip.
up.
Yeah.
Clever.
What time is it? Oh, it's 5:31. These after. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board. I'd like to welcome you all to the February 5th meeting. We'll begin by having our board members and our ex officio members introduce themselves, beginning on my extreme left.
Shahab Emrani.
Ray Casano.
Festus Bobeni.
Keenan Kinsel.
Paris Morphopoulos.
Caitlin Jammo.
Jay Poglace.
David Albright.
Very good. Move on to item number 2. I'm looking for a motion to approve the January 8th, 2020 DDB meeting minutes.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay, we're looking now for citizens to be heard for items not on the agenda. If there is any citizens that would like to address us, you may come up to the microphone, state your name, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
There's a microphone. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, my name is Ed Thebe. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Service Foundation here in Clearwater. We're on 925 Lakeview Road, South Bellevue neighborhood. Our focus is helping the low-income families with affordable housing. I also wear another hat, and that is with the Going Home Coalition. Going Home Coalition was formed a year ago to reduce homelessness in downtown Clearwater. In the past year, since January 2019, we have been able to serve 40 citizens off the streets from downtown Clearwater. That's either through our housing or through a return to your family program. That's part of this coalition. I'm here this evening to ask your consideration and your approval of an event that would bring awareness to the Going Home Coalition and its efforts, bring people to downtown Clearwater, and also help build a relationship with the Philadelphia Phillies. I'd like to call this Philadelphia Philly Appreciation Day. I would like to see us do a fan fest in downtown Clearwater that would attract all of the fans and allow for us as a city of Clearwater to say thank you, Philadelphia. Good luck as we send you off into your season at the end of your spring training. I realize that we have a very short window for something like this for this year. The date I identified would be March 21st, which would be the Saturday, one home game before they actually break for the real season to begin. I have started the conversation with the city of Clearwater. We have a pre-existing relationship with the Phillies through this coalition, so we would like to get their approval and endorsement of this. But I'm here tonight to ask for your support for this type of a project, and if there's any feedback you'd like to give me at this time, I'd appreciate it.
I think that's excellent work, 40 people off the street and into housing in the past year. That's extremely well done.
Thank you.
From us, you're looking for an endorsement of your activity, or you're looking for a specific ask from us?
At this point, it would start with an endorsement. We would like to see a partnership with you, the downtown, obviously. We thought we would start here. We have the city of Clearwater in mind. We have our coalition. We have the Philadelphia Phillies, and perhaps maybe some business organizations that are along the downtown corridor as well. We're looking at what the event may be as far as the extent before we come with a specific ask, but I'm prepared with your staff to put a budget request.
Very good. Does anyone have any comments? Jay?
Thank you. Is this a fundraiser then for your two organizations, or just an awareness thing? Is it a ticketed event? I mean, how?
We would not, I don't believe this would be a ticketed event. I think this would be for an appreciation of that. We'd like to have it be declared the official appreciation day from Clearwater to the Phillies. But as far as the fundraising, I would start with the awareness. I think it's shining the light on what this going home is all about and what we're doing in Clearwater to reduce homelessness. I think is a very big step for the process that we're in. There may be some additional benefit for future fundraising from that. We haven't really factored all of that together yet. First priority would be build awareness.
Shahab?
Having interacted with Mr. Thebe and his organization, and having actually donated property to his organization, I highly recommend this group. They're very effective in what they do, and they've done a great job.
Excellent. David, did you have something?
Well, I just, any kind of event that you have downtown, have you said you've been talking with the city, have you already filled out an event form application with them? Because if you want to do this in March, you're on a very tight timetable with that.
I understand. My conversations have been so far with the director of the Parks and Recreation, Art, and has enabled me to understand how fast we might be able to go, and we're going to take the appropriate step. If we can get it launched this year, we will try to do so, but we have to make sure we cross all the T's and dot the I's that need to be done. But again, if we get the endorsement of the city for this, I think they may be able to find a way to expedite things too, as a partner in this.
Okay, very commendable. Is there anyone on the board that would like to make a motion endorsing?
I would.
Yes, please go ahead.
I make a motion to endorse this project.
Second.
Okay, is there any further?
I do? Oh, whatever is in Mr. Thebe's head that he hasn't quite.
We call it Philly Appreciation Day.
Philly Appreciation Day.
Very good. And we have a
Continued
second. Any additional discussion? Jay?
One last point, I'm not sure what you would say on this as well. The city has actually, within it, a staff member that focuses on homeless relief. We actually do that within the city of Clearwater.
Yes.
So maybe Amanda would give direction too. I think it would be a good idea to contact Gabe.
Yes.
Have you talked to Gabe?
Yes.
And maybe coordinate and have then possibility that the city could be a
Gabe is already attached to the coalition in the sense that as we have made the progress in this past year, we've kept the city involved in every step of the way.
Very good. We'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Okay, are there any other citizens to be heard?
Hi, my name is Lisa Lanza, and I'm here, I think it was a couple of times ago, I came to speak, and I had some ideas, and I was stopped because I didn't want to give my address, because I guess you all but prior to the meeting, I'd actually spoke to Amanda, who said I didn't have to because it was already on record, and then it turned into a debate back and forth, and then my 3 minutes was up before I even had a chance to say what I wanted to say, just about up. And I just noticed the same kind of thing just happened where, you know, you didn't make an announcement that if someone wants to speak, they should fill the card out, and then the person just came up here and you didn't ask the question, did they fill a card out? And so I think you need procedures like, you know, across the board, that you have consistency for everybody. And also, even though you used up my time because of asking for my address, which I didn't want to give, the clock was running, and so, but then the next person that got up, she just talked on and on about a proposal, which I really supported. Matter of fact, she was up before me, actually. I really supported it. It was the idea to have yoga at sunset on the bluff, which I think is a great idea. But it's still about the procedures, like, don't you think when somebody has a proposal to make, first off, we don't even know which ones have to go to RFP, like potentially that yoga idea would have to go to an RFP, I don't know. But don't you think people should first go to you maybe individually to make a proposal before just, you know, standing up here and make the whole proposal thing before you take a motion. Make it, you know, follow some sort of procedures versus anybody coming up here and just making a proposal. Maybe it should have an RFP. The yoga thing, I think, should have gone to an RFP. I don't even know what ever came of that yoga idea. I think it was a great idea. I'm just basically talking about tightening up the ship and treating everybody equal. And like, if we were going to have a dialogue back and forth, is that within my 3 minutes, or does somebody stop the clock? And then like with that gentleman where you were dialoguing back and forth, did the 3 minutes keep going, or do you stop the clock when there's a dialogue? So I just want to, you know, I did write to Amanda about this, and I just hope that you do tighten up the ship a little bit and treat everybody equally. Thank you.
Very good. Just a comment there. I was remiss in not having the gentleman fill out a form. I should have asked him to fill out a form. So you're correct on that. Generally, we allow a person to speak for 3 minutes, and when they're done speaking, if we get involved in discussion, that's additional time that the board is utilizing for that topic. But the person's original statement is limited to 3 minutes. If we decide to continue it beyond that, that's our prerogative.
Okay. You know, we were given these cards today, so it is, I mean, but the only thing is the last time we weren't, and so I didn't. But also, I guess it's a matter of asking, and at the time you didn't even know that I didn't have to give you my address. So I think the address idea, that the city council adopted that a couple of years ago, but the issue is not to have to give our address in public.
Okay.
Security. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, we are revising our policies as circumstances bring them to our attention as needing revision. So we have tightened up. We didn't have that form before, we do now. So we'll move on. Are there any other citizens that would like to address us? Okay. New business items. Number one, we're going to ask Festus Porbeni and Lopez if you would administer the oath of office to our new member.
So if you would stand, raise your right hand, and then say your name where I say mine.
Okay.
I, Ann Lopez,
I, Festus Porbeni,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, protect, and defend
that I will support, protect, and defend
the Constitution and government
the Constitution and government
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Florida,
and of the state of Florida,
and the charter and laws
and the charter and laws
of the city of Clearwater,
of the city of Clearwater,
and the bylaws of the city of Clearwater Downtown Development Board,
and the bylaws of the city of Clearwater Downtown Development Board,
that I am duly qualified
that I am duly qualified
to hold office
to hold office
under the charter and laws
under the charter and laws
of the city of Clearwater,
of the city of Clearwater,
and that I will well and faithfully
and I will faithfully
perform the duties
perform the duties
of member of the board which I am now about to enter.
of the member of the board of which I'm now about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ann. Okay, now, our next business item is to nominate someone for the position of secretary. We have one more officer on our board to select. And do we have a nomination? Does anyone have a nomination for secretary?
I nominate for me.
I second Mr. Festus.
Very good. I think, is that all the nominations we have? Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's a done deal. Okay, we have a secretary. Now, Amanda, is there anything you wanted to discuss with us about the December 2019 financials? Before we
Yes, you
adopt them?
have the financial report there, and I just want to point out that it shows the funds that were spent are $330,000, a little over that, and that's because the increment payment has come through. So the revenue has been received, you pay to the CRA, and the CRA will end up passing that back through to you in the next month or two. So in case you looked at it and you said, what did we spend $330,000 on? I didn't sign any requisitions. That is what that is for. So that is your financial statement for this month, this past month.
All right. Now, looking for a motion to adopt the December 2019 financial statement for filing.
So moved.
Very good. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Very good. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Is unanimous. Very good.
Okay, so now we are on to the DDB Ordinance. And I have this slide here, just so you know if you have any questions about the budget. As we get into later your adopted budget, we have that information. But tonight you are being asked to consider recommending adoption of a revised ordinance for the Downtown Development Board. This recommendation would go to the City Council for their consideration. This was the schedule that we've been following. Even though we've been working on this for quite a while, we had our second work session tonight on the ordinance. So the one that you have before you has two amendments that were made this afternoon. On page 3, under section 2.148, Bylaws, Quorum, and Meetings, item number 2, that new sentence reads, 4 voting members of the board shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business, but fewer than a quorum may adjourn from time to time, period. And then deleting section 2.156, the effective date of the division, since that has already passed. And I just wanted to kind of briefly summarize the changes that you guys had considered, what are in the new ordinance. I'm obviously not going to read it to you, and you have your attorney here to answer detailed questions, but just for the benefit of our viewing public to know what has happened. The Downtown Development Board was created by a special act, the Florida legislature, in the late 70s. You are an independent special taxing district. You're a unit of local government created with a special purpose and limited to a specific geography. And your purpose is revitalization of downtown. But your area, powers, and functions are defined by city ordinance. So even though you are an elected body, you are governed, your ordinance is created by the elected city council. And so you have a couple levels of regulation: state laws, city ordinances, your own bylaws, which we're working on, and then the DDB CRA interlocal agreement. So what we looked at is really updating an ordinance that hasn't been touched in, 20 years, 30 years, something like that. Most of it is just a lot of changing and updating of the language, and then in some cases consolidating powers or giving a better description of what your functions and powers are, how you operate now, how you'd like to operate, and removing some other things that just weren't relevant anymore. So in the new ordinance, the proposed ordinance, it still emphasizes that your job is to preserve and revitalize the central business district to create a live, work, play environment. And that you're going to work within the adopted downtown redevelopment plans adopted by the city. A little bit of an expanded role. that you can provide more than just basic city services. It's not just about reduction of blight or fixing, right, a street that's not working, that you can do marketing, you can bring events to downtown, you can do enhancements, right, something that is better than just basic services. And that really you will serve as a common voice for downtown property owners, right? You are elected by downtown property owners and you can be that convener and common voice. For the elections process, we took most of that out of the ordinance and we're putting it in the bylaws, and I won't go into all the headache that is the elections process. We are working on that and containing the essential state law in the ordinance. For the bylaws, it just says that the way you operate will be contained in the bylaws and that you're going to look at them on a regular basis and keep them current. And then for the functions, a major change, you will adopt an annual budget and also a work plan, right? So very clear and transparent to the public what you'll be working on and how funds will be allocated towards that. That you also will continue to have your advisor role to the Community Redevelopment Agency and to the city on downtown redevelopment. And you're going to comply with state law, just to be clear. So with that being said, again, Elise is here as your attorney to answer any questions, happy to answer any questions, and we'd be looking for an motion to recommend the ordinance as amended in the way that I've described. And Elise, should they say the two amendments? We should fit in that now.
Say that again?
Public comment.
Yes.
Yep. So I'll
So-
sit down.
Keeping in mind everything Amanda has just briefed us on, if there's any public comment on the proposed changes or revisions?
Ms. Alonso, could you just clarify for anybody who's watching or for the future, who can actually serve on this board? Where do they have to live or work or play? Who can,
You can own property.
You can own property,
In this district,
okay,
or you can be a business owner in the district,
okay,
or you can be you can be employed in the district,
so some of the
or you
property,
can, I think,
And the
a resident,
principal
right?
place of business or employment. So for example, if you owned all of the McDonald's in the United States, but you lived in Seattle, then you would not be eligible, right? It has to be your principal place of business or employment.
okay. Now, are there any residential properties within the city where people who?
Yeah, if you own a condo downtown, you're eligible to be a member of the Downtown Development Board.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. Very good. Any other citizen comments? Very good. So now we'll entertain a motion for the proposed revisions as revised, with today's revisions as described by Amanda. Do we have a motion?
I move that we adopt the new changes today of the bylaws and regulations.
Not the bylaws, the city code,
Just ordinance.
the city ordinance,
City ordinance.
right? Okay,
You're adopting it for presentation to the city.
That's correct.
You're not actually making changes.
I move to adopt this presentation to the city to approve this.
very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. And before we move on, I'd like to thank Amanda and our attorney, Elise Winters, for a long and arduous process to date. And there's more work to be done yet as we proceed with the bylaws. So it's been a long time coming, and it's taken a lot of work to get to this point. I want to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, now on to fun stuff. And pass it around. Okay, so in our next two items, we're going over the Downtown Development Board work plan and then CRA updates. So this is for updating and conversation for discussion. There's nothing for you to make official motions on. So what the remaining items on the previous DDB's work plan are, we still are working on revision of the special events process. And I do need, if someone's willing to commit tonight, someone who would be a point person for that process to work with us from the board.
For the,
So to change the special events funding process.
What does that entail?
Just a couple conversations.
I'm in.
All right, great.
okay, so Keenan's it.
Yes. And so all these other items have happened with the exception of partnering with educational institutions to promote high-tech employment in downtown. And this was something that our former board member, Stu Showerman, was really interested in and passionate about. So this is not necessarily something that has to continue. I'm just reporting back to you guys that it was on the plan and we haven't really made any steps forward with that. So then we had a request last month to do a review, kind of what has the Downtown Development Board accomplished over the past 5 years, or what have they typically funded over the past 5 years? And Howard and Ann worked to pull this information together. And just to give you a high-level summary, right, you have a mixture of discretionary funding or non-fixed funding that you can change around, and then you have your fixed payments section, which is what you pay for staff, what you pay for advertising, what you have to pay the tax commissioner, all of those kind of things. So for your discretionary funding, the majority of it has been spent on special events. So looking at slightly over $400,000 over the past, I said 4+ years because we're only a couple months into this fiscal year. There's been a mixture of reoccurring events like your Clearwater Jazz Holiday, your Superboat Championships, your Chiba Boxcar Rally, and then there's been some one-time events like the Dolly Art Tour. There was a clown something, remember the name of it. So then you've had a mixture of things that you've just tried over time. You guys also provide annual contributions towards the Jolly Trolley, towards the downtown loop, and towards holiday lighting. In the past 20 years, if you look at a broader scope, and I'm sure some of you, right, especially Councilmember Alberton Poglaze know better than I do, there's been grants for business relocation, there's been construction of the downtown boat slips, and all types, some other types of capital improvement projects. So as you look at your current ordinance and the ordinance that you just recommended, you have a broad mandate. You don't have to do special event funding. It certainly is very important and critical, but you also can, you can do a lot of different things. The key is that you have to identify it and you have to adopt a program or a grant agreement for it in order to spend the funds. Any questions about that?
Going forward, we should be considering having another work plan session.
I agree. This is my recommendation. So we're working on the bylaws, hope to have those completed in March, April. Then I think once we have our structure in place, getting that work plan in April, May, and then adjusting the budget as needed to align with that. There's a couple different ways we can approach that. We can do that in a meeting like this. We can have a special work session. We can have another facilitated meeting with Collaborative Labs at the Epicenter, and they have fun whiteboards and facilitators and more interactive environment. You can engage with different property owners and businesses, right? You can have more of a planning sticky dot type approach. We have been reading this book about downtown redevelopment. And there's an organization called RMA. It's a private company that is responsible for the redevelopment of West Palm Beach, Delray, Pompano Beach, different cities in Florida. We can bring in people like that and do a training session and some kind of planning session. So, marinate, think about it.
Some additional discussion, and it'll ferment for a bit, and we'll come up to something we'd like to do, I think.
Right, we'll ping you. We'll send out an email, so you guys can respond back directly to us and let us know what you're thinking, what direction you'd like to head, so that we have that ready for the upcoming meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So a few quick updates, and then I had also promised to give you guys kind of an overview of placemaking and redevelopment for those of you that are new to the board, so we all have a common language and understanding. The CRA is actively looking to fund a special event management contract. And what that's gonna, basically, we've done a calendar where we know that every month in downtown, we need to have a major event like a Blast Friday, probably a medium-sized event like a Taste of Clearwater when they do the DJ, right, when No Before does the DJ in Station Square Park, and then a smaller type event like an art walk. And a lot of our time has been staffing in Second Century Studios and keeping events and programming going on there. So now that that's closed, we really want to shift in the CRA staff to capacity building to different groups in downtown to be able to host these kind of events. So we have a desired calendar, and we know that Ruth Eckert Hall is a good partner, and they're doing what they're going to do. And we're figuring out how can we best provide help to, just like what you saw tonight, right? I want to do a Phillies Appreciation Day, or if you remember, Daff and Dream wanted to do the fashion show, right, and bring in that designer. And then at some point they hit a process, right? They hit a city process, and it's police costs are too expensive, or I don't have time to fill out this paperwork. So we are meeting with different partners right now, and going through the purchasing process to figure out how can we help fund event management, right? So that if I'm the owner of Daff and Dream and I want to do a fashion show, I can go to this company and they're going to help walk me through the process and really take care of the process, right, of getting this event produced. And working with our Parks and Recreation Department to say, can we get a certain number of events co-sponsored by the city so that those public safety costs are reduced? So I want to let you know that we're working on that. And in terms of DDB funding, you know, you guys might want to be a part of that contract. You might want to say we want to allocate X number of funds to reduce public safety costs, or we're going to give marketing grants, or we'll continue to support events as we do, knowing that they now have this assistance. There's a lot of different roles that you can play, but you guys aren't out there staffing events. We cannot staff all the events in downtown, right? But we know that it needs to happen, and we want to ensure that there's an ongoing calendar of events that are happening. So we're working on that, and we'll keep you updated there. What I just handed out is Howard Smith and Chris Hubbard, our Cultural Affairs Coordinator, have been working on this. I don't know if you remember, Eleanor Lydia came, right, with Janelle Branch and Lena to talk about the tree lighting project for Cleveland Street. And so what you have here is 3 different techniques and the cost for those. So when we talk about uplighting and base lighting, this is what that's referring to. So if you look at page 4 of the handout, this is cost for 400 through 1100 block of Cleveland, right, Howard? Yep. So all the way down to Apex 1100. So if we want to do something like expand something like this, you're looking at around $20,000 roughly. This says draft because we have not thoroughly reviewed this, right? We've met with staff and we've solicited some quotes, but obviously this is not an engineered finished project. So this is just to give you a rough framework of what's possible. But this is what uplighting, base lighting looks like. And then the second, this is tree lighting where trees would be wrapped. And for those of you, I didn't know what a stalk was, but that is the bottom of a palm tree, right? So in case you didn't know either, I was like, what's a stalk? So there you're looking at the city cost plus the contractor cost there. So you're getting a little bit higher up there, $36,000 and $22,000. And then finally, the projection mapping, we've got 2 different quotes there. The first one, the $300,000, is if we rent equipment. So if we rent the projectors, that's what that cost would be from this particular vendor. And then the $535,000 is if we own the projectors. And one thing, I was really bummed when I found this out, but it makes sense when you think about it. We really don't have enough tree canopy to do projection. So if you look here, look how large that tree canopy is. And most of our trees do not have that much canopy, right? Palm trees certainly don't. And then most of our trees are smaller.
We have walls.
But we have walls. So what is in this estimate here is the walls within this area that would make sense to do projection on. So this, yes?
So, I mean, just looking at the figures, basically the first projection mapping estimate that is basically renting. It's 11 days, I guess, of rent for doing that, right? Is that a total of 11 days that will run?
No, that's just for travel. That would be rental. Is that rental for 11 days? No, that's just their travel and their installation costs.
How long would that be for this, is that a yearly cost? Or?
When we,
Yeah, no, go, yeah.
when we looked at this, we looked at possibly doing 2 different projects during the course of the year. So we kind of invested out to say that if we could do 2 individual themes, what would that be? So we looked at the cost of renting the equipment, so we would have this rental equipment for the year. Now, obviously, there will be additional dollars.
Okay.
Let's include that once we scope out the timeline, but that's the essential cost we've done.
That's an annual rental cost.
Yes, ma'am.
Question, this is for one tree or one wall to have a 3D image on it for a year, or many?
Well, we looked at 3 different areas for the 3D mapping, and we looked at city-owned projects. So we looked at the obelisks that are at the corner of Myrtle and Cleveland Street. We also looked at the Station Square for the Bank of America building, or doing something within that defined area, and then also looked at the Capitol Theater.
So if you look at page 3 under feasibility.
But is this for all of those, or would this just be one of those areas?
Well, with the equipment, it's for one project. So we would have to determine which project we want to do, if we want to do all 3 or do 1.
Pretty pricey.
People come down and see it.
Thank you.
So,
Just a quick question. In terms of pricing, I'm assuming we've expanded all different vendors for this, or?
so the next step, if you guys are excited about this, I'll be presenting the same information to the CRA trustees in 2 weeks. And then we would have to clearly define a project scope, and then we would have to issue a request for proposals. And then we get different bids in. It isn't so unique that we can do a single source provider. But, you know, I mean, it's fairly unique, but there's still multiple people who do this kind of work. So then we would have to go through an RFP process. But this was just, so we had to coordinate internally with staff, right, to make sure the arborists weren't like, no, you can't do that, you're gonna kill all the trees, right? We had to get that hurdle overcome, which we have, and then we had to figure out what really would work and kind of what's the cost parameter. Is it $5 million? Is it $20,000, right? What's the world we're dealing with?
And the purpose, I take it, is to be like a giant Christmas light show where everybody wants to come see it.
Yes.
And so there's other cities that have done this, and is that the result? Thousands of people come to see it? Really?
Well, I don't know about thousands, but it is an attraction, and it becomes a destination if it's really well done, which you would want it to be. We would make sure it was.
We need people.
Also, I think we should figure out what does it cost to promote this, because once you have it, if people don't know about it, they're not going to show up. So have to figure out the additional cost of promoting this or broadcasting this all over, so people know about it.
Do we know if there would be, like, let's say we did either the first 2 options, if there would be any impact on the holiday lighting that we already have in our budget? Like, if that would take some of that off because it's already lit?
Well, those, right now, that lighting is on the sidewalk side. This is the median.
Right.
So it would be 2 separate things. But certainly, I mean, we can look at all that together, right? If we want to decide we want to change up the holiday decorations, we can.
Amanda, I have a question on the 3D thing. It's a huge cost, and you're thinking of proposing this to the CRA board as well. So you're looking for funding from the CRA board as well as the DDB, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have a proportion in mind?
I literally got this morning.
Okay.
And I wanted to, I mean, in an effort to, I know that Eleanor and Janelle and Lena are patiently waiting, right? This is an exciting idea, and I just wanted to show, as soon as we had the information, I wanted you to have the information. So no, I have not thought about cost breakdown yet. I do think it's important, this is an idea that's come from the community and has had support from all of the downtown groups, and I think it's important that everybody has a stake in it. So even more than a financial breakdown, it's that everyone feels like they have some ownership in this project, so.
Now, out of the, in the feasibility section where it makes a few points about, you know, what kind of surfaces you can put it on and where are such surfaces, which are the, from your, I realize you haven't had a long time to look at it or review it, to you, what looks like, where would be the location that we would most likely pick?
Oh, for the projection mapping?
Yeah, if we did the projection mapping, and what would we project onto it?
No idea what we would project onto it. Something inspiring and beautiful, not cheesy. I mean, I think that we would either commission some artists or do a call for artists, right, who work in projection, who develop, right, this kind of material. For me, I would like to see, I don't know if the obelisks make sense.
That's what I was wondering, it's kind of a narrow.
It's very narrow, it's a crazy turn. I don't know if there's a safety issue by projecting onto the obelisk outside of, say, special events, right, when the street shut down or something like that. But all the other locations, you know, we'd have to talk with Ruth Eckert Hall about what they would want on Capitol Theater. But everything else, you know, I love. I love City Hall being lit up because as you're coming over from the beach or coming through, I think that's a huge, you know, sign for us, right, of life in downtown, especially with it being a vacant building. Station Square Park, Bank of America, again, really tall, kind of big spaces that can really light up that section of downtown. I mean, we'd even talked about the Nolan too, and Apex 1100. I see they didn't make this list, but I mean, those are other kind of big walls. Anywhere where you have a big wall, obviously I want color on it.
Just for my own thinking, just in terms of the magnitude of these projects, the uplighting has a significant impact for a fairly modest cost. It's not going to draw tens of thousands of people to come and look at it, but it'll be a nice thing to look at. The 3D will have more of a draw than this, but it's a significant capital cost. So it's like
It's cheaper than a streetscape.
anything is cheaper than the streets.
I think the purchasing makes more sense than the renting, looking at the numbers.
Well, then you can, every year, you can have new artwork commissioned, right? I mean, once you own it, then.
Different themes.
Different themes, you can change it up.
Anyway, those are my initial comments. Does anyone else have anything?
Are there cities we can research online to see what they've done before?
There are definitely cities that have done temporary installations like this, and we can look to see who's done more permanent.
Anyone else?
But we won't, I mean, we're not the first by any stretch of the imagination. But we'll be the first in this region.
It's a great idea.
I agree, great idea.
Yeah, thanks. Thank the trio of women who brought it to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Okay, so I hear you would like to know more.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And
All right. So, again, I know I'm standing between you and dinner, so I'm not going to take too long. The Imagine Clearwater 60% plan should be coming in the next month or so, so we'll be sharing those as soon as we get them, which is a further refinement of the design of the waterfront park. Just knowing this year we're going to be doing a lot more social media campaigns, so Rosemary will give you updates on that as those get more refined, focusing on our businesses in the CRA. After I meet with the CRA trustees in February, we'll be publicizing calls for letters of interest for CRA-owned properties, and that's really the first step to figure out who might be interested in redevelopment of a certain property, and then we can get into the official RFP process. We are in the CRA doubling down on our augmented reality programming. So that'll be coming out in May will be the event that we're doing with USF over the Comunidad mural. You'll be able to hold up your phone and you'll see the mural move, and it can pop up information about local businesses. But this is really unique for this region, and it's the best way that we've found so far to connect with younger audiences and bring them into downtown, that augmented reality really is what's very interesting to them. Paris, you look a little confused.
I'm just wondering, what do we know so far about how it's, about participation and people taking advantage of it or looking at
Well, we
it?
haven't launched it yet.
Yeah.
It's being programmed now.
It's being programmed.
It's being
so it hasn't-
coded. It's being created now.
Yeah,
and
I
it'll
thought
launch in May.
I thought you were suggesting it was ongoing, and I hadn't heard of it happening. I hadn't seen anybody doing it.
It'll be launched in May.
Okay.
Also, one of the gaps in downtown really is a community gathering space, an arts center, something akin to what we had with Second Century Studios. So we are really going to be working hard to find a space and a partner to recreate that experience, and be a place where people can come and hang out and be creative and have spoken word or show visual art, or I don't know, whatever they want to do. Be cool with each other. So we're actively looking for that kind of partner. So again, some of our new members had asked, how are other cities successful, right? A little bit kind of the theory behind downtown redevelopment and placemaking, and how have, those areas overcome different barriers. And so I just want to briefly go through some ideas about that with you. So there are common barriers across cities. Buildings in need of repair, right? Poor street design, meaning that it's only designed for cars and not anybody else, and sometimes not even well designed for cars. Vacant properties, outdated zoning regulation, high cost of real estate, or maybe lack of available real estate, right? Very common. Those are real barriers. And then there's perceived barriers, lack of government support, lack of interest from residents in new retail or housing, that it's unsafe, right, or an unwelcoming environment, right? Oh, that environment doesn't really want a diverse group of people. They only want one kind of person. And a lot of times among real estate agents or developers, like, oh, there's nothing there, right? And that's a perception. There's nothing there, so we shouldn't invest there. Nothing coming. And there are well-established kind of redevelopment processes and best practices. And the professional one, and this is out of the Reinventing Your Downtown book, there's like an 8-step process, right? And we have that process in our CRA strategy, where you have a vision, right? And you have a leader, and you assemble a team, and you have a plan, and then you implement the plan, you engage the private sector, you finance the plan, and then you start it all over again. Right, and this is a true process, right? A lot of places experience this, and you'll see, like, okay, Dunedin, they had a vision, and we're going to be, small town, family friendly place of fun, right? This is going to be Dunedin, and we're going to focus on breweries, right? And then they had their team of their city staff and their property owners who were interested, right? And they started implementing. They did they narrowed their main street and did streetscaping, right? They had events, maybe they had some incentives to bring breweries, right, engaging in the sector. They put their CRA funds towards these downtown improvements. Maybe their Chamber of Commerce or Business Association also raised money to do more events, right? And they work their plan. There's also another redevelopment process that comes in where the idea is that you convene the community, right? That actually you can do a lot of things without the involvement of government at all. Right? There's a lot that you can do as private individuals if your zoning allows it, right? If there's not regulations that get in the way, you identify the gifts or assets in a community. So in our case, being close to the water, that we have a great street network, we have some nice historic buildings. Those people own the change, right? They take a high level of responsibility for what's happening, whether good or bad, and that they build that on those assets together and they build on those gifts together. And so usually you're going to see in redevelopment a mixture of both of these processes, right? The more technical, professional side and the more community-driven side, and they kind of work in and out together. And what I'll say with successful cities is you have a lot of community-driven process, right? There's definitely a balance, and it veers more towards the community has really taken a heavy leadership role in really defining the vision and bringing that vision to life and garnering the investment. And the government's really taken a role in providing steady sources of financing, right, reducing those barriers to housing and new business, and making those major capital improvements, right? Things that like your citizen committee is never going to do a streetscape, right? They're not going to do that. That's something the government is most likely going to have to do, right? But your residents can do all the events in the world if your city allows them to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say for us, when we face some challenges, right, you can kind of come back and look at these two frameworks and see where there's tension between those, or maybe where there's areas that we're not addressing. And so what works from a technical perspective? Street design cues land use every single time. You're never on an interstate and you're like, this is an awesome place where I want to live, right? This interstate's like the best, right? Like if you drive down Gulf to Bay, which I lovingly call Fast Food Alley, who wants to live on Gulf to Bay? Who wants to walk up and down Gulf to Bay? What developer comes on Gulf to Bay and is like, this would be a place for really great mixed-use development? It doesn't happen, right? So your street design, if you don't get the streets right, it's going to be very, very hard to get the kind of land use development that you want. So that's usually the first thing anyone in my role when they're coming in, we're like, let's look at your streets, let's get our transportation right. Variety of housing types, retail choices, and programming, right? And I think of this as flexibility for all ages and all wages, right? That downtowns are about variety. They will not thrive if there aren't a variety of experiences and price points. And that's how you know you're not at a mall, right? If I go to Hyde Park in Tampa, have you guys been there recently? Right, with Anthropology and Sur La Table, and right, that's going to attract a very particular type of customer, right? And it's very small and it's a very niche experience, right? That is not, and it's in a downtown urban form, right? Walkable and structured parking and all those things, but that's not going to ever be like a thriving, diverse downtown, right? So the second thing you're looking at is, does our zoning allow this? Does our zoning allow different housing choices, or does everything have to be built the same size? Do our design standards allow for different sizes and price points? Do our grants and incentives allow for a variety of experiences? Community engagement or human-centered design. So before it used to be, I'm a professional, I sit in an office, I'm super educated, and I'm going to tell everybody what's best for them. Right? That was kind of a very dominant model of governance and operations for a very, very long time. And now we're learning that that doesn't really work, right? Because we're different, right? Everyone wants a little, if you're going to be all ages and all wages, you have to have design that's informed by that. So human-centered design means you engage the people who are going to be using that space or that product in helping to design it. And for us, it's like we always have to have conversations with the people who live here and want to work here to make sure that we are doing things that are important to them, right? This lighting project's a perfect example, right? If people from the community come and say, this would make a difference to me, right? If we have destination-worthy lighting down our median, that would change the feeling, that would change the look of downtown, right? And so we want to keep that conversation going and making sure that we're building things that for the people we serve. And I just love this picture. So if streets are first, then restaurants and housing are second, and retail's third. Retail is always the last thing, typically, that you're going to be able to attract, because you have to have the income in place first. You have to have the foot traffic, and you have to have the income in place first. And to have a sustainable downtown, you have to have people living here all the time. right? Unless you're a Disney World level destination, you're not gonna sustain restaurants and retail if you don't have people living downtown. And I think we see that now. We have a very good amount of daytime employment, right? So we support a lot of lunch places, but where's our gap? It's in nights and weekends. And that's really what we're working to fill, is what happens after 5 o'clock, what happens on the weekend. Because those people get in cars and they drive home. One, because there's not enough housing choice for them to live in downtown. You know, and I'm sure affordability and transportation systems, right, play into that too. And so finally, what a lot of places have done, there's a movement called creative placemaking or placekeeping. And what it says is every city, no matter what, has artists, right? That every city, artists are an asset in the community. And artists often have the greatest chance of success at bringing people together, at transforming the physical environment, and finding that kind of through line in whatever they do to bring different kinds of people together and make them interested. Right, so not art for art's sake, but if you think about groups that you're going to engage in transforming your community, they have a great track record, the artists do. So if you hear about creative placemaking, or if you wonder, you know, why do we take this focus on art, why is that one of our areas of interest, it's because they're really effective at transforming cities. And last thing I'll say is, this is your map. We're working on getting it updated. This is just business keeping, because Ms. Lanza has asked about it several times. So the city is in the process of doing all ADA updates, and this is part of it. But I just wanted you to know that we were working on that. Any questions about anything I covered?
Great presentation. Orients us to.
That's, now you have a master's degree in planning, so.
Excellent.
You get a certificate.
Well, the housing has started. The
Yes.
Apex, the Nolan, Skyview. So we're on our way.
We are. And we need a lot more housing.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Just wanted to say, if there's any citizen comments on this last presentation?
Alonzo, that was a great presentation, Amanda. We're really fortunate to have you here in our city, and your staff too. There's a park that when I come downtown a lot. I really enjoy coming downtown. I come to the library, and for many reasons, but when I come down at night, I like to come down Cleveland, even in the day. But there's a park on the north side of Cleveland with beautiful trees in it, and I always wondered who owns that park, and why is it just sitting there not being used? There's no benches. Is it private? It's right next to Fifth Third Bank.
That's privately owned.
Okay. So, but there's some beautiful trees in there. I don't know if you've engaged. I have no idea who owns it. I could go to the property appraiser and look at it, but I just haven't gotten around to it. But you know, the 1100 building now, they're going to have retail down below, right? And that park isn't far from the 1100 building. But that area from there till you get to Myrtle, I think, it's dark. So your plan is to light that. That'll be really nice. And then the other place we have huge trees is Coachman Park. And you know, we go to Largo Park every year to see everything decorated, to see the trees and to walk the park. I mean, it's an annual thing that we do. But we've got our park here that's just not been engaged. You know, there's beautiful trees there. Sometimes we'll leave the Capitol Theater, and before going home, we'll just go for a walk around the park. There's like nothing. There's no lights. There's just lights alone, as you well know. And we've got some beautiful oaks, very large old oaks, and I didn't hear you mention that in the presentation. And even as we walk down at 11 o'clock along the pier, downtown Marina, some of the lights down there were not lit. And then the cement, talk about artists, you know, it's just like ugly cement. It could be painted with nice colors. So we have a great, it's basic, it's all here. It's all here. It's just a matter of taken off. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so from there, we'll go on to the chairman's report. There's a few points to mention. On February the 17th, it's President's Day and city offices will be closed. Coming up on the weekend of the 22nd and 23rd of February is the Sea Blues Festival at Coachman Park. On the 26th, for your information, there's a free electronics collection recycling event from 7 in the morning till 3 p.m. at the Solid Waste Complex on Hercules. Residents may bring up to 6 unwanted electronics for recycling. You have to bring proof that you are a city resident, like a utility bill or something like that. February 27th, we have the CRA monthly meetup at 10:30 a.m. at the main library. And this coming, the last Friday, the 28th of February, we have Blast Friday, starting at 5:30 p.m. Features John Waite. And with that, we'll go to final comments, beginning on my left. Okay, Ray?
I really agree with that last speaker. That lighting of the trees on Cleveland will make it so inviting to steer people to the downtown. I'm really looking forward to seeing that get done. And it also is the lighted pathway aiming towards Coachman Commons. So I'm all for any lighting on Cleveland. I think it'll be a big plus for downtown.
Great. Festus?
Yeah, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. Keenan?
On a different note, speaking of attractions, we're sitting in this gorgeous library, and a week or two ago I wandered through. I hadn't been through it in a long time, and I've forgotten because I've gotten into Google. I'm a Google guy. Everything's Google phones. But the amount of amazing books and videos that are in this library is astounding, number one. Number two, there's a room upstairs, in case everybody doesn't know, where they have all the equipment in the world to archive all your old stuff for free. Like if you have pictures or reel-to-reel or anything that's, not digitized, there's this great room upstairs. You can bring your stuff and do that. So anyway, if anybody's watching that wants to do that, this is the place.
Very good.
I'll just add, welcome to our new members. Excited to have you, excited for ideas.
Great. Jay? David?
Good.
Very good. And, I'm excited about the lighting proposals. I think lighting up the trees, uplighting seems to me very affordable, very doable, and very needed and wanted.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones are exciting also, but that one is like almost a no-brainer that we should move forward on. And with that, at 6:33 in the evening, declare this meeting adjourned.